You don't have to stop doing things. You don't have to stop trying to be successful. You don't at all have to stop striving for more and better for yourself and your family and the people that you impact and all that. No, that is not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you're serious about that, then you have to be more efficient and more directed and have boundaries and focus.
Welcome to the Ignited Recovery Podcast, a new way forward for anyone looking for answers but feeling left out. If you've been searching for empowerment, triumph, and purpose, you've found them right here. You won't hear the same solutions, and you're not going to have any excuses to fall back on, because Ignited Recovery allows heroes to rise and become their best selves. I'm Dr. Adi Jaffe, and I can't wait to be your guide on this journey. Are you ready to become an ignited hero?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited Recovery Secrets Podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe, and we are here to talk stress. We all have it. You've got it. I've got it. Everybody you know has it. But I got to tell you that you probably don't recognize the extent to which stress, and maybe more specifically chronic stress, might be killing you slowly. Now, I come from a really, really high achievement and high stress focused family. You know, my entire life growing up, my dad, who was really put up on a pedestal, was known for his achievement in sports, his achievement in academics and medicine later, his achievement socially. It was always about how good he was at everything that he did. And that translated in many, many ways to a life where what you got done and how you performed measured what you were worth. I've talked about it before, I think a couple of times with Sophie on the podcast, and that had to do with like being on time, getting good grades, doing the work, and being great, like being at the top of the class, etc., all those sorts of things. Now, in my life in the past, I started rebelling against it, and I went the other way, which is probably still really stressful, but at home, it was all about performance. To this day, I fight the need to fall in line with those old beliefs all the time. There's this story that I tell sometimes, which was, I was young. I was in third grade, I think. And the school that I went to was right behind our house. And so literally I would kind of like get out of school, walk around the little playground, and I was home. And I came home with this math test. And I came home, my dad was never around when we first showed up. I was a latchkey kid. So came home, waited till my dad showed up home, and then I showed him this test, and I got a 97 on this test. And my dad looked at it, and the first words out of his mouth were, what happened to the 3 points? Where'd you lose the 3 points? And that pretty well exemplifies the life I grew up in. If it's perfect, it's good enough. Anything less than that is essentially failure. And like I said, I fight the need for that all the time. And here's the thing. It's not that success is bad. It's just that always comparing yourself to other people and trying to measure up or beyond that and using that as the single barometer of how you're doing in life is an issue. Success is absolutely part of what makes life good, but it's the stress, especially when we're going to talk here in a moment about chronic stress and focusing on that aspect of success alone, comparing yourself, that can have huge negative impact that I don't really think we respect enough. And so I wanted to dedicate a whole episode to it, because we're going to talk about the biological, the psychological, and the social implications of these things. And so, look, let's start breaking it down really, really simply. Biologically, your body responds to stress, acute stress, like momentary stress, in a positive way. And what do I mean by that? It injects your blood with corticosteroids like cortisol and epinephrine and norepinephrine, these chemicals that increase your alertness, improve threat response, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. They actually help your immune system short term to kind of like get a hold of whatever's happening around you. The idea, you've heard this before, right? You walk around in the forest back ages and ages ago, and a bear jumps out. You want your body to get primed because of that stressor, bear's about to kill you, into action. And so stress response is actually a really, really positive thing for our survival in the short term. The thing is that we were created to only have it in short spurts so that you respond to the stressor, it goes away, and then you get to live your life. But when you end up living in a constant state of alertness, despite the fact that there are no bears coming out of anywhere, there's no real risk to your life, that prolonged stress means those chemicals, cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and all the other cascade effects that happen in your body because of this, get tired out. Your body's not supposed to be pushing that into the blood for such long periods of time. And in a sense, your body responds to chronic stress in the same way that it responds to chronic illness. Prolonged chronic stress can lead to so many symptoms, and it's crazy. Skin problems like eczema and things of that nature, psoriasis. Menstrual problems like not having your period, anxiety, depression, headaches, abdominal pain, insomnia, severe back pain. There's an incredible book on that. Problems with concentration like ADHD and things of that nature. It can also cause panic attacks, a panic disorder, anxiety. It can increase your risk of cancer and of many cardiovascular diseases, including hypertension and diabetes. Now, I want you to think about what I just said, right? Biologically, when you put your body into hyperstress mode, these chemicals that keep circulating in your body, not only are you depleting your natural systems, but you're also telling the body that there's like this constant infection, this constant disease that is happening. And your body breaks down because just like under the stress of a chronic disease, it doesn't really know how to handle it well. Here's the thing. Because chronic stress happens due to a whole slew of different things, environmental, nutritional, chemical, or pathological like bacteria, virus sort of factors, because we live in a world that has pollution and I mean, some of the pollution you get is air pollution, but some of it is light pollution. Like when you look at your phone all night, right? And you're just staring at your phone at 2:00 in the morning, that blue light and the light from your phone and the lights in your room are really damaging. They're causing your body to be alert at times where it shouldn't be. It can cause the atrophy of muscles, push the body to store more energy as fat. Why? Because your body thinks you're at risk. So if your body thinks you're at risk, it needs to protect itself. It keeps your blood sugar levels abnormally high. That's why you get insulin insensitivity and people get diabetic. It's insane what can happen to your body when you put it under this stress. One last piece that I'm going to talk about biologically here is it can also really, really damage your immune system, which makes it more likely you'll be sick and can cause autoimmune diseases. Think like Hashimoto's thyroid condition or Crohn's disease, things of that nature. Our biology is just not meant to be stressed like that long term. Trying to always be on top of your game is literally killing you. I talked about my dad on the front end. My dad was an uber successful physician. When we lived in Israel, he had 3 jobs though, actually 4. He worked in a hospital, then he worked in a private clinic, and then he had his own clinic that was literally a room at my grandmother's house. That's why I never saw the guy, right? I literally didn't see my dad other than Saturday mornings for breakfast. He also was an active duty in the military, right? So I think that meant that like every month he had to go away for a weekend to serve. So even one of those Saturdays was gone. He wasn't a part of our lives. Now, uber successful, moved to the United States, got to a point where he was making a lot of money and working in one hospital and actually got part of his life back. But then he also died of cancer in his early 50s, right? Like my dad never got to meet Kai. He got to see an ultrasound of him, which for an OBGYN at least told him way more than it told the rest of us about who Kai was going to be. But he didn't get to meet his grandchildren, any of them. He barely made it to Sophie and my wedding because he was in a wheelchair because his body broke himself down. He was an athlete growing up. His body broke itself down because of the crazy amount of stress that he put himself under. So was all the achievement worth it? I don't know. Now, just to exemplify to you how you don't have to actually choose, what I'm saying is you want great achievement, you've got to figure out how to biologically handle your stress. Professional athletes know this well because there's so much research in sports fitness on how to recover from the workouts and the games and all that kind of stuff better. Actually, some of the best research in sports fitness has been on recovery methods like hydrotherapy and active recovery, how to best stretch, compression garments, right? So how to relieve some of the tension on the muscles when you're not working out and when you're just in recovery mode, and massages. Like, the amount of time professional athletes spend in recovery when they're actively working out and playing is about as much as they spend pushing it. Now, my question for you is, do you do the same? Now, if we get into psychology, the same sort of concepts apply, right? Like, first of all, again, my dad, especially later on in life, as the stress was kind of building him down, and I experienced this in my own life, lost a lot of his ability to actually have fun and enjoy himself. Because when it comes to our psychology, being on high alert all the time causes so much damage. Again, let me just mention these athletes that I just talked about a second ago. You got to show up for the game at your best every single time. The athletes do. So do you. It's just that you call your game life. So you have to show up to your relationship as the best you. You have to show up to work as the best you. You have to show up to family gatherings as the best you. That means that in between these moments of full on, you have to find a way to take breaks and have self-care and have boundaries so you can define when those times are. Because let me promise you one thing, take the best athlete on the face of the earth and make them work, instead of a 60-minute game, make their basketball game last 5 hours and see what happens to some of the best athletes in the world. Your body cannot take that tension, right? You take the world's best sprinters and you just put them on a sprinting block and you just have them hold in that stance that they go before the sprint, right? When they're in full tension, and they will collapse within a minute. Now, when it comes to the effects of the brain, chronic stress literally inhibits neuron growth. And one of the places that it does that in is the hippocampus. And if you want to know what the hippocampus does, it's not really important for anything that you care about. Just memory and depression. So if those matter to you, then maybe you should pay attention to that, right? The hippocampus is actually one of the few areas of the brain that grows new neurons as you age and you get past adolescence. We know this for a fact that by looking at people's brain scans, that people who are depressed tend to have smaller hippocampi. Why? Probably because their hippocampus is not growing as many new neurons. Probably partially because of this chronic stress effect. It also suppresses other pathways that are important for attention and thinking and decision making and planning, which speeds up aging, and it can exacerbate the damage that is caused by stroke and lead to heavy insomnia and all those other things, because these chemicals cause wakefulness. So as you get more of them, it's harder to fall asleep. Again, think phone, late night, stress late at night, all these sorts of things. So many of us were told that we have to push harder and do more so that we can be good at things and be awarded for stuff and then be happy. But I got to tell you, unless you actually find a way to balance that with recharging, reflecting, and relaxing, I don't know if those were the 3 R's before, but that was really cool. Recharging, reflecting, and relaxing, then you're going to burn out. And when you're burned out, you can't be ignited. You like that? Another fire-based motto. When you're burnt out, you can't be ignited. So yes, success is important. Yes, competition is good. Yes, wanting to do better and be great at what you do is important, but it has to be balanced by something else, and that is the self-care and the recharging that you need for yourself. Otherwise, your brain will have to give up. It'll have to give up because it is not meant to be in this chronic stress stage long term. Now, I'm going to take it one level higher, and that is society, the social implications of this. We live in this false reality of constantly chasing the achievement. We are told that you will be happy when you work the hardest, achieve the most, and become the best. And there's such a scarcity component to that, right? Which is the idea that if you don't beat the other people, you won't be able to be as happy as them. So you can't be happy for other people. You can't really enjoy their success because the fact that they're successful means that you are not if you're constantly comparing yourself. Anybody feel that? Any of you live a life where you're constantly judging how well you're doing by other people? I got to tell you that you can find out pretty quickly that those things you're measuring your success by in others do not necessarily reflect the internal place that they live in. I have to tell everybody that I work with that this scarcity mindset that we socially share, especially in the US and some of these individualistic countries, is one of the most damaging things we have, because it puts all of us on a state of high alert. Because if it is a zero-sum game, if other people get it, then I get it taken away from me, then I have to fight for my own. That just makes sense. But if we replace that with an abundance mindset, one where it says, if I do my best, and that includes being my best, I will create more in the world. And by taking the space that I need for myself, I will leave space for you to do your best and create your best, and then allow the world as a whole to grow and prosper without all of us trying to step all over each other all the time. You know, my dad died of his cancer, and I absolutely ascribe a lot of that to his stress, because cancer does not run in his family. It's not something that many people in his family died of. He took on this massive level of stress, succeeded because of it, and then died early. My growing up with stress my entire life, right? Trying to fit in, doing the right thing to just be the person that everybody wanted me to be, it led to some pretty terrible choices. I think you've heard about some of them before, including the heavy drug use and the jail and all that, right? The whole time I was just chasing the need to be what other people wanted me to be. I now struggle with Hashimoto's, by the way. That's one of the medical conditions that I have. And I absolutely think that has something to do with these conditions, with this internal constant strife that I was putting myself, my body, and my brain under. One of the things that really allowed me to connect to the fact that I was thinking about success the wrong way and measuring it the wrong way was actually the work I've done with some of the wealthiest and most famous clients I've had. Because when I looked at what it was that made them miserable, what it was that made them come to work with me, were actually these internal and external stressors that they were struggling with all the time. And a lot of them were self-imposed in some way, right? They were internal and external stressors that these individuals felt they had to take on. When you become a celebrity, you feel like you always have to put on a show for everybody that you know. When you can really let your foot off the gas, it's a matter of ego. When you have a lot of money, you always feel like you have to compete with the people around you for who has the biggest yacht or takes the best vacations, all this bullshit. But that competition leaves you in a place where you just can't take a break. I was in the car today on the way home from an appointment, and I was on my phone, and I was noticing that every time that I would hit a light and my car would stop, I would get on the phone and send some text, and then the car would start again. I would put the phone down, and I would drive, and I would do the same thing again. And then I had this internal thought. I thought to myself, holy shit, I'm literally not giving myself a break for half a second, right? I'm driving and focusing on that, and then when that stops, I do something else, and I do it over and over and over. Now, I've gotten my morning rituals down, but here I am doing it again. And literally what I did instead was I put the phone away, and every time there was a light, I would just close my eyes and do like a 5-second breathing exercise. It is your duty to get yourself out of chronic stress if you want to grow and develop. Bruce Lipton, in his book, The Biology of Belief, talks about how stress, and chronic stress in particular, puts your body in defense mode. It literally affects you epigenetically. It changes the way your genes function in your body. It reduces the length of telomeres in your genes, which is literally a mark of how aged you've become. And when you're in defense mode, you can't grow. So if you're trying to move forward in life, and you're trying to grow and change and develop and learn and become better, it is your job. You have to minimize stress. And as Alex Sharfin sometimes says, pressure and noise. Now, here's the number one takeaway I want you to have from this. You don't have to stop doing things. You don't have to stop trying to be successful. You don't at all have to stop striving for more and better for yourself and your family and the people that you impact and all that. No, that is not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you're serious about that, then you have to be more efficient and more directed and have boundaries and focus, just like those athletes I was talking about, right? Will you be able to perform really well if you don't do these things? Sure, for a short period of time. And then you'll either burn out or die. But if you want to really achieve long term throughout your life, then you have to take care of yourself so you can do everything at your best. And that's what you're here for. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you like this. Take a screenshot. Let me know what resonated. Share it on Instagram, etc. At Dr. Adi Jaffe, at ignited.me. Thank you all so much. Leave a review, especially if you really like this podcast. And as you remember, on Wednesday, if we read your review, if Sophie or I read it, then you'll get a nice little pack of goodies. Love you all so much. Have a great, great weekend. See you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ignited Heroes Recovery Podcast. I really hope you found the information here useful and that we'll see you back here next week. And look, I want to make sure that this podcast is the most useful it can be for you, so please let me know by emailing info@ignited.com if there are any specific topics or questions you'd like to have addressed. As usual, if you like this episode, I would love for you to leave us a 5-star review and rating. Thanks, and see you next week.